This story is titled, After Coming Back from a Girl's Trip. My fiancé asked for an open relationship. I kicked her out. Hey everyone, we put a lot of time and effort into finding these stories to keep bringing you the best content. If you enjoy what we do, it would mean the world if you hit that subscribe button. Your support really makes all the difference and keeps this journey going strong. Thanks so much for being here with me. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, Hi all, I'm not sure if I'm overreacting here, so let me know what you think. Alright, so here's how it all started. My fiancé, 27 female, now ex-fiancé, and I, 28 male, been together for 5 years, and for the most part, things were good, or at least I thought they were. We met in college during our sophomore year, and everything just clicked. She was smart, funny, and had this energy about her that made you want to be around her. We started off as friends, but it didn't take long for things to get more serious. Fast forward a few years, and we were living together, sharing bills, planning a future. Getting engaged felt like the natural next step, and when I proposed last year, she said yes without hesitation. We'd even started talking about buying a house and having kids someday. That's what made this whole situation so hard to process. I wasn't just losing my fiancé, I was losing the life we'd been building together. Just got back from this big girls' trip with her friends. She was gone for about a week, and everything seemed fine before she left. She was excited, making plans, talking about all the stuff they were going to do. I was happy for her, even encouraged her to go and have a good time. She works hard, and I figured a break would do her good. When she got back, though, something felt off. I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but it was like she wasn't fully there. You know when someone's physically present but their mind is somewhere else? That's what it felt like. Normally, after we've been apart for a few days, she'd greet me with a big smile and a hug, and she'd be eager to share every detail about her trip. But this time she barely said a word. I asked her how it went, and she just shrugged and said, "It was fine." Then she walked past me and went straight to the bedroom, leaving her suitcase by the door. I ignored it, thinking maybe she was just tired, but even that night, when we were eating dinner, she barely touched her food and spent most of the time scrolling on her phone. It wasn't like her at all. Over the next couple of days, though, her behavior got weirder. She was on her phone a lot, like constantly. She'd never been the type to obsess over her phone before, so that stood out to me. Then there was the way she started acting around me. She'd avoid eye contact, seemed distracted when we talked, and even the physical affection just wasn't there. I'm not saying we were all over each other 24/7, but we were always pretty affectionate. Suddenly, it was like there was this invisible wall between us. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was up. I decided to give her some space, thinking maybe she'd snap out of it. Relationships aren't perfect, and I figured if I backed off a bit, she'd open up when she was ready. But that was not what happened. Instead, the distance between us only got worse. So I tried bringing it up one night after dinner, asking if something was bothering her, or if there was something on her mind. She didn't bother, saying everything was fine, and that I was overthinking things. But her tone? It didn't match her words. It was like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I let it go, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. 5 years together, and you start to pick up on these things. I didn't want to push too hard, but man, it was eating at me. What was going on? Why was she acting like this? A few more days passed, and I started to notice patterns. She'd get texts late at night and would flip her phone over when I walked into the room. I'm not the kind of guy who snoops or accuses without proof, but this wasn't normal. I thought about confronting her, but I didn't want to come across as paranoid. Instead, I tried to focus on work and keep myself busy. I figured if there was something going on, she'd eventually tell me. Boy, was I in for a surprise. Looking back now, I think I knew something big was coming, but I just didn't know what. One night, she came home from work and said she wanted to talk. My heart sank immediately because, let's be real, nothing good ever starts with, "We need to talk." I sat down, trying to play it cool, but my mind was racing. What could it be? Did I do something wrong? So there we were, sitting on the couch. I could feel the tension in the air. She was fidgeting, playing with her hands, and avoiding eye contact. That's when she hit me with it. "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship lately," she said, her voice calm but a little too careful. I raised an eyebrow. "Okay, thinking about what exactly?" "Just, how we could make it better," she said, finally looking up at me. "Better?" I asked, leaning back. "What's wrong with it now?" She hesitated for a moment, biting her lip. "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly. "I mean, things are great. But when I was on the trip, some of the girls opened up about their relationships. They talked about how happy they are because they've found ways to give each other more freedom and trust." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "Freedom and trust?" I repeated, confused. What does that even mean? She was twisting her hands nervously in her lap. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, like she was trying to convince herself this was a normal conversation. She wouldn't look me in the eye, though. Instead, she kept glancing at the wall behind me, like she was afraid of what she'd see if she actually looked at my face. It was the way she said it, too. So rehearsed, like she'd practiced the speech in her head a dozen times before saying it out loud. That made it feel even worse, like this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thought. She'd been planning this. She took a deep breath, like she was bracing herself for something big, and then she said it. I think we should try an open relationship. I swear my brain short-circuited for a second. I just stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. Wait, what? I finally managed to get out, my voice louder than I intended. She looked at me, her face dead serious. I've been thinking about it for a while now, she said, her words deliberate, like she was trying to convince both of us. I think it could be good for us. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to process. An open relationship? Are you serious right now? Yes, she said, her tone calm but firm. It's not as crazy as it sounds. A lot of people are doing it, and it works for them. It's about trust and being honest with each other. Trust? My voice rising. How does bringing other people into our relationship have anything to do with trust? Where is this even coming from? She sighed, running a hand through her hair. Look, I know it's a lot to take in, but I talked to some of the girls on the trip, and they shared their experiences. They're happier now. They said it's brought them closer to their partners. I shook my head, completely floored. And you thought, what? That I'd just jump on board with this? That I'd be okay with it? Her face softened, like she was trying to be patient. I didn't say you had to decide right away. I just think it's something we should consider. We've been together for so long, and I want to make sure we're still growing, not getting stuck. I tried to catch myself feeling a knot tighten in my chest. So now you think we're stuck? After 5 years together? You think the solution is, what? Sleeping with other people? She flinched at my words but didn't back down. It's not just about that. It's about exploring who we are as individuals while still being together. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there feeling miserable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 5 years. 5 damn years of building a life together, and now she wanted to throw it all like this? We'd never even talked about open relationships before. It wasn't part of who we were or what we wanted, at least as far as I knew. I asked her where this was coming from. Was she unhappy? Did she feel like something was missing in our relationship? She said no, she loved me and our relationship was great. She just thought this could be a way to make it even better. That didn't make any sense to me. If things were great, why would she want to mess with them? I told her that, and her response was, it's not messing with it. It's evolving it. I'm not gonna lie, that pissed me off. Evolving? This isn't a Pokemon. This is our relationship. I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. Is this about someone specific? Did you meet someone on the trip? Her head snapped up and she looked almost offended. What? Oh, of course not, she said quickly, shaking her head. You're sure? I pressed, studying her face. Because this is coming out of nowhere, and it's starting to feel like there's more to this than what you're saying. I swear, she said, her voice a little higher than usual. There's no one else. I didn't meet anyone, and this isn't about that. It's something I've been thinking about, that's all. I leaned back, crossing my arms. You swear there's no one else? I repeated, watching her carefully. She nodded, her expression tight. Yes, I swear. This isn't about anyone else. It's about us. I told her I needed time to think. I didn't even know what to say at that moment. I went into the bedroom and just sat there for a while, staring at the wall. My thoughts were all over the place. Was this real? Was she serious? Did I even know her anymore? After about an hour, I came back out. She was still sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I stood there for a second, then said, I can't do this. She finally looked up at me, her face calm. What do you mean? I mean, I can't do an open relationship. I'm not interested, and I don't think I ever will be, I said, my voice steady. She set her phone down on the coffee table and crossed her arms. Well, she said slowly, maybe we should take some time to figure out if we're still on the same page about what we want. That was it for me. I stared at her, trying to process how she could be so casual about this. 5 years, I said, my voice shaking slightly. We've been together for 5 years, and this is what you have to say? Like it's no big deal? Her face changed then, like she was starting to realize how serious I was. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly. I just think we need to talk about what we want for the future. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. If you want an open relationship, then you're not the person I thought you were. And I'm not going to sit here while you dismantle everything we've built just because your friends got into your head. She sat there, stunned for a moment. You're seriously kicking me out over this? She asked, her voice breaking. Yes, I said, staring her down. Pack your things and leave. Her eyes filled with tears, and she started crying. I didn't mean for it to go like this, she sobbed. I just wanted to have a conversation about it. That's all. I didn't mean to hurt you. There's nothing left to say, I told her. This isn't a conversation I ever wanted to have. I can't do this, and I won't. She wiped at her face, sniffling as she got up and headed to the bedroom to pack a bag. I didn't follow her or say anything else. A few minutes later, she came out, her bag slung over her shoulder, and stopped at the door. Is this really it? She asked softly. It is, I said, not looking at her. She hesitated, then opened the door and walked out. I sat down on the couch, staring at the empty space where her things used to be, and felt like my whole world had just imploded. I kept asking myself how we had gotten to this point, but no matter how many times I replayed it in my head, I couldn't find an answer that made sense. That was the beginning of the end. The night she left, the apartment felt so empty. Her things were still here. Her clothes, her toiletries, all the little knickknacks she liked to scatter around. But she was gone, and it hit me hard. 5 years of being together, building a life, planning a future, and in one conversation, it all just crumbled. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I groggily grabbed it off the nightstand, and her name was everywhere. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. I sighed, scrolling through the messages. Please, can we just talk? One text read. Another one said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just want to explain. The voicemails were more of the same when I played a snippet of one. Hey, I know you're mad, and you have every right to be. But please, just give me a chance to talk to you. I need to explain. I can't lose you like this. Then her friends started calling me. Apparently, they'd gotten wind of what happened, and they were all tripping over themselves to apologize. They claimed it was their fault, that they'd been hyping up the idea of open relationships during the trip, and she just got carried away. One of them even said, we didn't think she'd actually bring it up to you. Like that made it better. I told them to get away with it and back off. I wasn't interested in hearing excuses or justifications from her friends. What pissed me off the most was that she let them influence her like that. If she was so easily swayed by her friends, what else could they talk her into? My family was furious when I told them. My mom kept saying, you dodged a bullet. My dad, who doesn't usually get involved in my personal life, said I did the right thing by standing my ground. That support meant a lot because I was already second-guessing myself. Her family, on the other hand, was a different story. Her mom called me saying I should give her another chance and that she was just confused. Her dad tried to guilt me saying, you're throwing away a beautiful relationship over a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? She asked to sleep with other people, bluntly. How is that a misunderstanding? The worst part, though, was some of our mutual friends. A couple of them tried to make me feel like I'd overreacted. One even said, she was just being honest about what she wants. Isn't that a good thing? Yeah, honesty is great, but there's a difference between being honest and blindsiding your fiancé with something that completely goes against everything you've built together. One friend, let's call him Dave, really got under my skin. He kept telling me I was being old-fashioned and that I needed to be more open-minded. He even said, it's 2024, man. Relationships aren't black and white anymore. I couldn't believe he was defending her, especially since he'd seen what I was going through. Then there was Anna, one of her closer friends, who let it slip that my ex had been talking about the idea of an open relationship before the trip. It seems that she'd brought it up as a joke during a group hangout a few months ago, and everyone just laughed it off. That made me feel even worse, like I'd been left in the dark while she'd been testing the waters for a while now. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what to do. She kept calling and texting, begging me to meet her and talk things through. Part of me wanted to hear her out, but the other part of me was still so angry and hurt. How do you come back from something like this? How do you trust someone who can so casually throw a grenade into your relationship? For a few days, I felt stuck in this weird limbo. On one hand, I didn't want to see her or hear her excuses. On the other hand, the idea of not getting any answers was eating away at me. What if there was more to the story? What if she'd been lying about everything, even before the open relationship thing? I remember pacing back and forth in my living room one night, going over it in my head. I even considered calling her, but every time I picked up my phone, I stopped myself. In the end, it was a couple of close friends who convinced me to meet her. You need closure, one of them said. Otherwise, this will keep eating at you. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, they were right. Eventually, I decided I needed closure. I agreed to meet her, mostly because I wanted to see if she'd come clean about what was really going on. Something was telling me there was more to the story, and I needed answers. We set up a time to meet at a cafe. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe some kind of explanation that made sense, or at least an apology that felt genuine. But I wasn't prepared for what I was about to find out. I showed up to the cafe about 10 minutes early. I wanted to get there first, find a spot, and mentally prepare myself for whatever she was going to say. I was nervous, but mostly I just wanted it over with. She walked in right on time, looking like she hadn't slept much. Her hair was a little messy, her makeup was minimal, and she looked stressed. I'll admit, a small part of me felt bad for her, but I reminded myself why we were there. She sat down across from me, and for a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Then, she started talking. She apologized right away, saying she'd handled everything wrong and never meant to hurt me. She said the idea of an open relationship wasn't something she'd been planning for a long time. It was something her friends brought up during the trip, and she got caught up in their excitement. She claimed it was just a what-if scenario, something she thought we could talk about, not something she was serious about pursuing. I never wanted to hurt you, she kept saying. I just wanted to explore the idea together. I told her that if she really valued our relationship, she wouldn't have dropped something like that on me out of nowhere. She would have talked to me first, not waited until after some girls' trip where she clearly got influenced by her friends. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes, and said she understood. She looked genuinely upset, but I still wasn't buying it. Something about her explanation didn't add up. That's when I decided to ask her something I hadn't planned on asking. Can I see your phone? Her face went pale. I'll never forget that look. She hesitated for a second, but then handed it over, probably thinking I wouldn't actually go through with checking it. I'm not the kind of guy who normally does stuff like that. I've never felt the need to invade someone's privacy. But this time, I couldn't ignore my gut feeling. As I sat there holding her phone, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Part of me didn't want to do it. What if I found something that would completely change the way I saw her? But another part of me, the part that couldn't shake the gut feeling that something was wrong, needed to know. My hands were shaking. I opened her messages, and it didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There it was. A conversation with some guy I didn't recognize. They'd been chatting for a while, and from what I read, it was clear this wasn't just friendly banter. There were flirty messages, late-night texts, and even a couple of suggestive comments about seeing where things go. The first message that caught my eye was from some guy I didn't recognize. They'd been chatting back and forth, and it wasn't just friendly small talk. His messages were flirty, calling her things like babe and cutie, and she wasn't shutting it down. Instead, she was encouraging it, responding with laughing emojis and saying things like, "You're too much," one message from him said. "Can't wait to see you again." I was disgusted. That's all I needed to see. This wasn't just her thinking about an open relationship. She'd already started exploring it. I put the phone down and looked at her. She was already crying, mumbling something about how it wasn't what it looked like, and that it was just talking. I told her to stop. There was no point in lying anymore. "So this open relationship idea wasn't just an idea, was it?" I asked. "You were already testing it out." She flinched, her breath hitching. "No, it wasn't like that," she said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. I was just talking to him. That's all. It wasn't serious. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid mistake." "A mistake?" My voice rising. "You were talking to him, flirting with him, making plans with him, and you expect me to believe it was just a mistake?" "It was!" she cried. "I didn't mean for it to go anywhere. I was just curious. I love you, and I don't want to lose you." I looked at her, full of anger. "You already lost me," I said flatly. "The second you thought it was okay to bring someone else into us, you lost me. Please," she begged. "Please don't end this over one stupid mistake. I'll do anything to fix this." I stood there for a moment, watching her break down, but the anger in my chest didn't fade. "You made your choice," I said quietly, "and I'm making mine. We're done." I stayed calm because we were in public, but inside I was furious. The fact that she even entertained the idea while we were engaged was enough for me to walk away. She kept apologizing, but I didn't want to hear it. I stood up, told her I was done, and left the cafe. As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, relief, and even a little bit of clarity. I watched her as she sat there crying, trying to explain herself. It wasn't the kind of tears that felt sincere, though. It was like she was panicking, scrambling to fix a situation she'd lost control of. Her words felt rehearsed, like she was trying to say all the right things to make me forgive her. It was just talking, she kept repeating, but her tone didn't match her words. There was no real regret in her voice, just fear. Fear of the consequences, fear of being alone, fear of losing the comfort of what we had. And as I looked at her, I realized I couldn't do this anymore. No matter what she said, the damage was done. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly where I stood. I wasn't going to let her drag me through the mud or play games with my emotions. Whatever we had, it was over. After that meeting at the cafe, I thought that would be the last of it. I blocked her number that same night and deleted her from every social media platform. I didn't want to see her, hear from her, or even know what she was doing. I was done. For a few days, I had peace. She didn't try to reach out, and I finally started to feel like I could move on. Then, out of nowhere, our mutual friends started texting me. They'd heard what happened at the cafe, and most of them were reaching out to apologize. I guess word got around about the guy she was talking to, and suddenly, people who'd been defending her before were switching sides. One of her friends told me she'd started dating the guy right after our breakup. I wasn't surprised. It was obvious at this point that she'd been lining him up in the background. What did catch me off guard, though, was how quickly things went south for her. Apparently, she was posting pictures of him on social media, trying to make it look like they were some perfect new couple. Mutual friends said it came off as forced, like she was trying too hard to prove something. One of her captions was something like, "When you find someone who truly understands you," which felt like a dig at me. But the funny thing was, people weren't buying it. A couple of friends even told me she blocked them after they called her out for moving on so fast. Then, just a week later, the posts stopped. No more pictures, no more cute captions, just radio silence. That's when word started spreading that he'd ghosted her, and she was losing it. She was telling people how he led her on and used her, but honestly, I wasn't surprised. It was like karma showed up to collect, and she had no idea how to handle it. When I heard about this, I didn't feel bad for her. Call it petty, but it felt like karma doing its thing. You can't treat people the way she treated me and expect everything to work out perfectly. Life doesn't work like that. Some of our mutual friends started cutting ties with her after that. They said she'd been acting toxic, spreading lies about me, and playing the victim. She was telling people I was manipulative and didn't value her, which was complete BS. Luckily, most of our friends saw through it, especially when they found out she'd hooked up with someone else literally the day after our breakup. It's wild how quickly people turn when the truth comes out. A couple of the same friends who'd told me I'd overreacted were now apologizing left and right. They admitted they were wrong to doubt me and said they didn't realize how messed up the situation really was. I told them it was fine, but honestly, it felt good to have their support again. As for her, she tried calling me from different numbers after I blocked her. I guess when the guy ghosted her, she started rethinking things and decided she wanted me back. She left me a voicemail saying she was ready to work things out and that she realized how much she loved me. I didn't respond. I didn't even think about responding. By then, I was completely over it. The person I thought she was and the person she turned out to be were two very different people, and there was no going back. After everything that went down, cutting ties wasn't just about technology. It was about fully removing her from my life, both physically and mentally. I pack up the rest of her stuff. She'd taken the essentials the night she left, but a lot of her things were still scattered around the apartment. Clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, random little things like her favorite coffee mug, and some books she always kept on the nightstand. Packing it all up was weirdly emotional. Every item felt like a reminder of the life we'd built together, and for a moment, I wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I'd think back to the cafe, to the messages I'd read on her phone, and any second-guessing disappeared. I texted her from a burner number, one she didn't have saved, and told her to pick up her stuff by the end of the week or it was going to Goodwill. She showed up 2 days later, looking like she'd been crying. I didn't let her inside. I handed her the boxes at the door, said goodbye, and closed it. She didn't argue, didn't try to push her way in. She just stood there for a second, like she wanted to say something, then left. That was the last time I saw her in person. After that, there were still loose ends to tie up. She and I had a few mutual subscriptions and shared accounts, so I went through everything and canceled or changed the passwords. Netflix, Spotify, even the utility bills. Anything that connected us had to go. I wasn't trying to be petty. I just wanted a clean slate. The hardest part was dealing with mutual friends. Some of them had already cut ties with her after everything came out, but others were still trying to stay neutral. I get it. They didn't want to pick sides. But for me, there was no middle ground. If you were still hanging out with her after all this, I didn't want you in my life. I told a few people outright that I wasn't comfortable staying friends if they were still close with her. Most of them understood, but a couple of people acted like I was being dramatic. You can't just erase 5 years like it never happened, one friend said. But that's exactly what I needed to do. One by one, I started trimming down my circle. It wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about protecting myself. I didn't want to hear about her, see her in tagged photos, or get updates about her life. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual friend that she was still talking about me, spinning stories to make herself look like the victim. She told people I'd overreacted and humiliated her, conveniently leaving out the part where she was already talking to another guy. I let it roll off my back. I wasn't interested in clearing my name or setting the record straight. The people who mattered already knew the truth, and anyone else? Well, they could believe whatever they wanted. Eventually, the noise died down. Her name stopped coming up in conversations, and the texts from people trying to mediate or explain stopped too. It was like she just faded into the background. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted.